Welcome to the All Things Black podcast with your host, Mr. Black Ovation. You guys make sure you tune in to my episodes. I'm on Apple Podcasts. I'm on Radio Public. I'm on Spotify. I'm on Google Podcasts. Make sure you subscribe and listen to all the previous episodes, and that way you bring you up to date. But make sure, above all anything else, you share this episode and these my podcast with your friends, family, and anybody that you associate with. Today I have a really interesting guest. He is actually a family member. He's my nephew, and he is in the culinary field. He is a chef, and he is phenomenal at his work, which we'll definitely get into a little bit later. But what I'm going to do is, as with tradition, it is somewhat necessary for the host to introduce the guest and talk about their accomplishments and things like that. But again, I'm of the mindset that nobody can talk about themselves better than themselves. So I'm going to introduce to you guys Mr. Entrepreneur, Mr. Chef, my nephew, Mr. Jahbri Merrit. Jahbri, sir, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me on this platform. How are you?
I'm doing good. So check it out. Like I said, nobody knows themselves and can talk about themselves better than themselves. So I'm going to give you the stage. I'm going to give you the floor, and I'm going to let you tell the people, a little bit about yourself, what you're doing, where you reside, stuff like that. Go right ahead.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Jahbri Merrit. I'm a little kid out of Kansas City. Migrated with my mother and my grandmother here up north to Minnesota in 2000. So I've been here majority all of my life. Grew up watching them cook a little bit here and there, and spent many years kind of just playing around with things when I had the time and just growing and maturing. And kind of one day, presence of cooking, certain things just kind of came natural. And so I've been a chef for quite some while. I tend to believe that, if you confident in what is your ability, that is, that, I can consider myself a chef long before I even went to culinary school. So really I started cooking and really getting real into it around about 14. I'm 29 now, so right on the brink of 30. And I just graduated at culinary school with my degree as of last Wednesday. And I had that one notch under my belt, and I'm just keeping it pushing. I stepped into the entrepreneurial field as of a year and a half ago. And I have my own catering company with a chef, another partner of mine. And together we are trying to, put ourselves on the map. And the mission is to bring more diverse concepts and delicious meals to everyone that represents our tradition, represents our culture, but also at the same time represent health and wellness. So it's not some of the most, you won't see the traditional foods all the time on our menu. But you will see some things that pay homage or an ode to the traditional things that we used to eat, but you'll see a nice spin or a nice twist to it. And that caterer company is called Twin Cities Global Cuisine. And like I said, the mission is to just give everybody a brand new experience, the different nuances and flavors and good food. And that's what brings everybody together and have a good time. So
I like it. And again, that's Twin Cities Global Cuisine, which you can definitely find them on Instagram. Is there any other social media pages where they can find you at?
Yes. We have Facebook and we have Instagram at the moment. And we do have our website at www.twincitiesglobal.com. And that website is currently under reconstruction. We're revamping it as we speak. It should be up within the next 48 hours. So again, Facebook, Instagram, and then we have our own website at www.twincitiesglobal.com.
Perfect. Listen, man, I'm waiting for this one, but we gonna have to talk about that goddamn strawberry cake that you guys make. I don't know what that is. That every time I see it, I'm like, golly, man, I got to get my hands on that. But anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit later. So congratulations on you graduating culinary school. Absolutely. What's some of the things that you enjoy about being about being a chef, and what was some of the challenges that you encountered going through culinary school?
Boy, Man, that's a loaded question. We try to keep that as short as possible.
Got it.
Hands down, excuse me, I'm kind of adjusting my headphones here. Um, the joys of being a chef really just the freedom and passion of doing what we do best, playing with the flavors, making new recipes, making our dishes, knowing that people are going to enjoy it, getting that feedback to hearing what people love. And just, because as chefs, we could be critical on ourselves. You know, rarely do you see people come behind the scenes of the kitchen and see us how we do things. And so people think that we tend to be perfectionists, but that's only because, we know our taste buds and we know how our dishes are supposed to taste. So we take flavors very serious and we want people to get that consistency when they're trying our foods. But it's very fun. It can be tedious, but it's also very fun as well as challenging. So learning to master that ability, you have fun in the kitchen, especially, when you're playing around, whether you're grilling, whether you're blending, mixing, things like that, or if you're a baker. Those are the things that you enjoy so much. And it's just about, again, experiencing new flavors and making things that you might not be accustomed to, and also making the things that you know best, because people are going to enjoy just that. Some of the challenges, that I faced in culinary school was last year was unprecedented. So I'm not even going to lie. There's a chip on my shoulder as far as, the culinary field. Many things that we are taught going through culinary to get that degree requires us to be hands-on. And we experienced that per se, but many of our classes, they got transitioned into, essays or PowerPoints or, papers. And so some things that you're not just going to be able to learn fully unless you get your hands dirty with it. So
basically you're talking about you had to do a lot of online. You were doing online stuff instead of actually, being in the labs, so to speak, and getting your hands dirty and stuff like that. So everything was pretty much online. Yeah,
correct. But granted, some of the assignments things like that we had to do was online anyway, because there's culinary is a small mixture.
Right.
But about 80% of it is hands-on. That 80% turned into about 40%. And so some what's a good example? There was a class that it's a farm to table class. Basically, we were supposed to be driven out we were supposed to go to the next state over in Wisconsin. We were supposed to visit a big, huge sustainable farm. And we were able to go over there and pick the produce, learn about farming, agriculture, gardening, and then make things from the garden, concept recipes and things like that. Well, that didn't take place. Now, that's something huge for me, because I can't wait till I get into the environment where I could be able to make my own garden. Because once you're a chef, you realize that some of the best food comes from your local farmers markets and organic markets. And, once you taste certain things, you don't want to go back. And it's that freshness and that earthiness of everything is really nice. So when you're a chef, you're like one step closer to being a gardener or a farmer, if you will, which should be talked about more. Actually, that conversation should be entertained within our community about doing our best to tend to some of our own herbs, vegetables, and fruits per se.
Right.
But as far as that class goes, we didn't have that opportunity to do that. And so they got turned into a PowerPoint presentation and turned into a paper. There are some people, when you join culinary, you get people of all walks of life and all ages. So many people never got to experience that, including myself. But I know what could have became of that. And so that was very frustrating to see that whole entire experience get turned into a paper. Some things you can't properly visualize. Some things you can't properly experience. You can't transition that to a piece of paper. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
But that's just me. I'm all about the experience. And if you choose to be in the culinary field, a lot of what you're going to do is going to be about experience. That's like asking somebody to make a pan of bread from scratch, and you never made a pan of bread from scratch before, but they want you to write a paper about it. Well, you wouldn't really know. It'll sound good, but if you take that, whatever you wrote in your paper, and you apply that as a step-by-step list, it might come out totally different. And so some things you just got to properly feel for it. And so, that's a lot of what our classes and our experiences turned into during, the pandemic. And it was quite frustrating because it was a lot of work, and it would have been the work itself almost doubled and tripled on paper or online versus if we were in class.
That's crazy. You know what, man? Just listening to that and um, not having to be a part of that experience, man. That pains me because I would have loved to just sit back and and just listen from you to kind of express about what that experience was like. Being able to go to somebody's garden and learn that kind of stuff. That's big. That was huge. And for that to be reduced to an online assignment, I can definitely understand the frustration behind that. That was huge, man. I definitely feel you on that one.
Oh, absolutely. Some students are paying. Not everybody gets financial aid or tuition. Many people in my classroom were paying out of pocket. So there was no refunds and there was no compensation, any of that. It's just kind of, oh well, unfortunately, some of those experiences and classes was like it is what it is, and so many of them. Granted, to the instructors and people of the schools, they never dealt with something like that either. And so they tried. I guess they tried their best. I'm going to kind of give them a little bit of leeway. I guess they tried. But the frustration came out of the fact that I don't want to toot my own horn, but my class, we had some extremely intelligent people in that class, and we had great ideas and great concepts to how to curb, the problems that we were facing at the time. And that comes from just trying to focus on solutions rather than focusing on the issue at the moment, because we don't want to miss out on the experience. We can't double back and go get that again, especially when we're paying for it out of pocket.
Right.
So we were really all about literally making the most out of it. And the frustrating part about it was many of the people of the representing the college or instructors or teachers were not in full agreement, or they didn't even invite us into the conversation, to talk about what's best for us. And so what we got out of that was extremely lackluster. And it just seems like it didn't, no one really cared.
That's disheartening. That's tough. That's a tough one, man. That's terrible. That's really bad. But you definitely got to understand that, we were in the pandemic and stuff like that. So a lot of things end up having to transition into things that most of us wasn't ready to, ready or prepared for. So that part is totally understandable. But man, not to have that type of experience, in what you were talking about, that's still tough, man. That's a really tough one, because me and myself, I would have enjoyed that. So let's see. So we talked about, some of the challenges. We talked about, some of the things that you like about being a chef. I don't know if you actually know or not, but what would you say the percentage would be of actual black chefs in Minnesota that you know of?
I can count on both hands how many of us there are, to be honest with you. And there may be some more. Maybe they just don't have a bigger platform yet. And I try my best that if I see some on my timeline and suggested friends and things like that, I will click add friend right away, because, I'm not extremely competitive or things like that. I just want to be able to be in the presence of other male black chefs. And I've had the privilege of being around a few and actually working for one in their black owned company. But, I told myself a couple years ago, I need to be a rep. I want to be a black male chef in the Twin Cities of Minnesota and promote us and put ourselves on the map. I need to be in that community. Well, you have to go out and search for it over yonder, literally. And again, I could count on both hands how many of us there are. And I probably won't use all my fingers. So it's very small.
Wow.
But yeah, it's very small. And yeah.
That's pretty. Now that's pretty bad. So the question becomes after that, why do you think that is? Is it because it's not seen as a kind of masculine type of field of endeavor, or why? Because it sounds crazy to me, because most of the time, when I was growing up anyway, everybody loved eating, and then everybody loved some degree of cooking. Like most of the guys I grew up around, If they wouldn't do anything in the kitchen, they would definitely do something on the grill. So I
Right.
mean, I don't understand why that, we have so many of us that are not even thinking about that course of, that course of that field. Why would you think that might be?
Well, I believe it's a culmination of things. One, it's funny that you say that because the culinary field has always been dominated by males.
Right. Right.
But in our community, it's a little bit adverse. A lot of us grew up with mama, necessarily specifically Big Mama in the kitchen, So, in our households, typically we had, women went up in there doing their thing in the kitchen and everything was so good all the time. You didn't need nobody, helping around. And so
Right.
you might have had pops or you might have had uncles, somebody out there on the grill, and they kept it at just strictly that. Grilling is looking at it as a very masculine thing.
Yeah, right.
Being a chef is looked at, can be of a masculine thing, but it's, it's like 50-50 sometimes. As to why that is because cooking was necessarily deemed as masculine. It was just it kind of goes back to like caveman mentality, meat over fire, being banged on your chest and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And being a chef requires you to pay attention to detail. It requires you to concentrate on flavors. It requires you to plate it correctly if you care about how things look. It requires you to focus on sometimes portion sizes or, method. It's a lot of discipline in cooking and patience and things like that. And that's with any skill that a man chooses to be, to hone his abilities in, honestly. So, you have that. You have us not really being used to that. And then as we grow up in school, if you were a product of public education, you never saw boys write on our papers where you want to be when you grew up and things like that. You wouldn't really see the word chef. And there was not classes in school that groomed you for that. The only classes that many people could say that existed was some schools offered a home economics class. And then every now and then you might be able to bake some treats. That's as far as it ever went.
But real quick, I'm sorry to cut you off, but it's just weird. It's just weird though, because when you look at the culinary field, most of it's, pretty much dominated by white males. You definitely have a lot of white females into that space, but it's predominantly dominated by white males. So I'm trying to figure out why it's so, prevalent for white males to go in that direction. But it seems as though, we as black men are kind of steered away from that direction, because you can actually make some really good money, man. And being a culinary chef.
Absolutely.
Sous chef and all that kind of stuff. You can make some good money. You can actually branch out and start your own restaurants and have your signature dishes and everything. So it's just weird.
It's very weird. If I could, chime in really quick, it's very weird. The other factor I was going to add in addition to that was we're not business oriented. Not only were we not groomed in schools to care about cooking, and we as boys, as boys turning into men, many of us are not even concentrating on the health benefits of maintaining and cooking our own food. We're not shown the ways to cook our food or how to cook even in the first place.
Right.
And so we rely heavily on our women to do so. And then, like I said, we weren't properly groomed in the acts of business and how having your own restaurant or cooking or being a chef or being a lead chef or whatever you choose to be, a sous chef, it's just one of those things that's never projected our way. And so many times the people who ended up being a chef, they either go off on their own in search of becoming something like that. They make that decision, but it's rare that black men are raised in an environment and an upbringing to be a chef, unless you have some chefs in your family that might be well known and things like that, almost like a passing down the torch type of thing. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. It's a white male dominated field. And I'm going to put it like this. Many people who are trying to be cooks or sous chefs or prep chefs, whatever it is, or, garmager, or, we don't speak enough about our experiences in those kitchens because you experience a lot of, oh man, you experience a lot of racial tension, a lot of discrimination, a lot of prejudices, a lot of things, to the point where people who were in kitchens or were in high profile restaurants would rather not talk about it because it makes their blood boil. And then on the top of that, that field being particularly dominated with white males, tend to almost be, I don't want to use the wrong term here, but it's almost like there's almost a phrase in society, and I'm going to butcher this because I don't remember correctly, so please forgive me for the listeners, but uh, many chefs or people who get to, have the title of chef in a kitchen, not head chefs per se, but the people that are under them tend to be tend to be like the rejects of society. They tend to be like the drunks. They tend to be like people who have like are felons, or have a little bit of a record, or just never could get their life properly together, or they had a history of like drug use, things like that. And this is what makes the behaviors and the attitudes and that toxic culture exist in the environment of kitchens and high profile restaurants. You will never see it on the outer surface, but on the inside, there are days where tempers flare and it could be hellfire, especially in high profile restaurants, because they pride themselves on running the kitchen like a military. They run it militant style, where you have to respond to the general and the sergeant and everything. And, yes, chef, no, yes, chef, there's no such thing as no chef, is yes, chef, and the term heard. Those are the two things that was always happening. It's run just like the military, and you're not able to thrive all the time in those environments or try something new. It can be extremely hard, and it's not for the faint of heart. And so that's another reason why you tend not to see some black males in those societies, in those environments, because it can be extremely disheartening, a lot of pressure and the tension, and sometimes the behaviors and the anger behind it alone tends to make more black men walk away from that field than they come towards it, unless you have goals to operate your own business. But even before then, you normally have to spend 10 to 15, sometimes 20 years in another kitchen, trying to build up your name, trying to build up your platform, trying to build up your following, your fan base, making a name for yourself. Yeah. And so you gotta suffer through the suck, to finally get your moment of shine. And nobody ever really knows when that actually might take place.
Interesting. That's interesting. I'm glad you said a lot of that, because a lot of that I didn't know. So that begs the question then, do you think some of that is actually done intentionally to kind of dissuade, a lot of black men, specifically from that particular, field of endeavor, because that's kind of what it sounds like to a degree, because again, you got to remember that a lot of money is made off of food. I mean, tons of money is made off of food.
Absolutely.
And when you can get that in the hands of, people that look like you and me, then that means that could be, to one degree or another, could be, some type of financial freedom and stuff like that. So I'm just thinking, in the way it sounds and the way it feels, is that it might be, to one degree or another, intentional, to kind of weed out a lot of us as black men to be in that particular field.
Oh, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, being in the presence of other men, especially men that you're not familiar with, you have to have your morals, your principles, and there's respect. There's three different categories that, many men choose to live by. It doesn't matter what environment or what job you work at. And so you could tend to look at situations, and balance out your morals. You stand on your principles. And many times in that kitchen, people are going to test your principles and test your respect all the time. It's constant ego checks in the kitchen. And whether that could be done intentionally or not, honestly, depends on the restaurant. But more often than not, if you see people walking out of kitchens, it's going to be people of color. It's going to be the black men, the black women, and sometimes the white women. And they're in the kitchen because, a lot of times I've seen them outnumbered, 10 men to 1. And like I said, the discriminatory things that happens in there, the prejudices, the sexual innuendos, so many things happen in the kitchens that, if people really started coming clean and talking about these things, which actually more and more chefs across the country are actually doing to bring light to, these environments, they become certain culinary whistleblowers, because some places have thrived for so long, but the inside is so toxic. You know, these are the type of people you see walking out the door: the dishwashers, the prep cooks, never the sous chef or the head chef, because they help man everything.
Yeah.
But some kitchens have single-handedly ran their business into the ground, and they would never admit it. It's because it starts at the top. It starts with the behavior. It starts with how they treat people, and unfortunately, they turn their kitchen into a revolving door as far as employment.
That's not good.
It's not.
Yeah, that's not good at all. Interesting, though. Interesting. Okay. I've learned a ton just in the couple of minutes asking those couple of questions from you about that. We're going to ask some different questions here. I want to ask you, since I do have you on here, what do you think is involved in a great meal besides the taste? What do you think is involved? And that could be anywhere from like you said earlier, talking about the different flavors and the seasonings and stuff like that. But I mean, to really have, let's just say you have your restaurant, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have patrons that come in and they want to partake of your services and your food and stuff like that, right? What do you think? What do you think would be what's all involved in someone having a great meal? You know what I'm saying? And again, that's besides the taste.
Right. There's about 3 or 4 different things in my opinion. And a lot of this tends to be depending on what kind of cook you are. But the first thing I would say was ambiance. I've come to terms of realizing there's like 2 different types of customers, and they're probably in more categories, but I kind of focus on these 2. There's the customer who loves the restaurant or the environment because of the ambiance. The setting is everything.
Yeah.
Right. They like to feel welcome. They like to feel that customer service, and then as long as they have that down packed every single time, you'll get returning customers. And as chefs or cooks, if you have your own platform, your own space, you want to be able to provide that. Then there's the other customer who is there because the food is never amiss. People eat with their eyes first.
Yeah.
And so besides flavor, you want to focus on the color. You want to focus on, yes, how you put things on a plate does matter. And you want to focus on the color. You want to focus on plating, and you want to focus on your textures. And then, it depends on what it is that you're making. It depends on what it is that you're making. What the hottest things right now are foods that people know and love and was great and raised up on, these comfort foods, but with the twist, something that's a little bit different outside of the norm. If you're bringing in something to their table and you put down their plate and it's something they can kind of recognize, but it has a little twist on it and makes me feel like, oh, I haven't had that before. This is different. This is new. And then, when you plate things correctly and you got the color and the different things on there, it makes it look very good. You don't want something too foreign on the plate unless somebody specifically wants that.
Yeah.
But you also just want to, it's about that comfortability, but also, making people like, you can look at this plate of food and be like, I want that. Yeah, that's what I want.
Right.
I could read it on the menu. Yeah, I could read that. I could read that on the menu. Like, what is that? I know what it is, but not really. Tell me more about that. I think I want that. And then you bring it to them, and it's even better than what they envisioned. If there wasn't a picture already, that's what gets people really wanting to try it out. And then if the flavor is there, it's already a hit. Now you have a guaranteed customer.
Got it. Yep, because that's one of the things I definitely wanted you to kind of highlight was presentation. I love a great presentation. When somebody actually makes a meal or something like that, is very that to me that's more inviting than per se ambiance. Just to have something placed right on the plate. You know what I'm saying? No drizzles or not unless it's intended. You know what I'm saying? Because some of the desserts come like that. You'd have a little drizzle or something on top of right. the entree, but right.
Well, it shows that we care. It shows that you care. You took your time to pay attention to the details and to be like, the customer's going to like this because if I wanted to order this, I would want it to look like this. Instead of just anybody could heat something up and just put it on the plate. You could do that at home, but people are paying for a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
So you have to give them what they paid for.
Yep.
And you want to keep them coming back. So absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. I agree with that. Another question for you.
Yes, sir.
For you, well, I'm gonna make it two questions, and then we'll go from there. What's some of your best dishes and desserts, and what has been some of your fondest memories learning about those desserts and those dishes? Learning how to cook them, like you know what I'm saying, learning how to cook them. You know,
Right.
what's been some of the fondest memories of learning those particular dishes, and what's been some of your best dishes and desserts? I'm gonna say that goddamn cake. I
Well,
want
it's
that
funny
cake,
because
man.
the cake, the same cake that you salivate over, I don't make that cake. My partner does, but it's funny because I've made that cake before in the past, before it became a trend. Um, that strawberry crunch cake. We obviously got that
Oh
idea
man,
from the strawberry crunch bar that you would see on the ice cream trucks.
yeah.
But we kicked it up a notch and we put a whole cheesecake in the middle
Whew.
instead of So it's a strawberry crunch cheesecake cake. That says a lot, but it's a lot when you eat it. So, you know, it's
I'm gonna pause you
yeah.
right there real quick, but I want you to continue. But I'm just gonna pause. I have you pause real quick. So the people that are listening, the cake that he's talking about, in particular, you can actually go to his website. You can go to his Instagram page, maybe Facebook, I believe, and you can actually look up a lot of those the dishes that he does make, and that cake that I'm talking about specifically. You can definitely look that up. And just presentation wise, it's a delight. It's a very good delight. There's also I believe you were bringing up making a new dish. It involved wings. So can you kind of talk about that one?
Yeah, I can talk about that real quick. So I'm more of a flavor guy. So like you asked me about some of my favorite dishes. I can't really give you favorite dish. I can kind of give you the things with some of the best flavors. That's how my taste buds work. So like I've made plenty different wings before, and so I like to play with different flavors. I'm from Kansas City, so I'm just now finally starting to tap into I've always loved barbecue, but I've always wanted to try like different variations of barbecue.
Mm-hmm.
So these wings that I debuted was passion fruit barbecue sauce.
What?
It's a little yeah, it's a little tangy, and it's like a sweet heat. And that's my taste buds loves anything that's like sweet heat. But because you're gonna get a little bit of a little bit of a sweetness, you're gonna get a big kick, so it balances out in my mind. Very good. But they were all the rave, and I'm pretty much I experimented with them, and I'm definitely going to throw those on the menu for this upcoming summer. On top of the things that's already has caught the wave of the city.
That's interesting because I've never heard that pairing before. I've never heard of that pairing before. You hear about maybe, like mango or something like that in there, but I've never heard of like dragon fruit, type of way. So I'm, in my mind, I'm kind of thinking you got to have that right balance with that in order to be able to taste, both the sweet and the heat at the same time with that. But that's interesting, though. But you were saying that right now, the people that have ordered those plates, they do love them. They absolutely love them.
Yes. Yes, because it's called Twin Cities Global Cuisine for a reason. So, I get heavy inspiration from Africa, Ghana, Congo, everybody in the Caribbeans, Jamaica, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Southern America, Mexico, us being black here in America, all the way out to even playing with a couple of things in Asia. We want to be careful. That's why we take our time debuting things and trying out things, because we don't want to just put out anything and say, oh, here's this and here's that. We want to be able to actually use some of those seasonings, use some of those actual fruits and vegetables that pays an homage and a tribute to representing those countries. And we infuse that with flavors and foods that we already know and cook with, and we turn it up a notch. And so, like I say, it's a culmination of things, and it's gonna make people eat it. It's gonna be like, hey, I know what that is, but then they're gonna try it and they'll be like, wait a minute, that's different, but I like it. And and a lot of the different things and herbs and seasonings and spices and fruits and vegetables that we add to the mix of our dishes and our desserts it doesn't make things so extremely decadent or extremely fatty all the time. It has a lot of great health benefits. like the hibiscus tea that we have.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we have a spiced hibiscus tea. For people who don't know, hibiscus is it comes from a hibiscus flower that stems from Africa that has a whole lot of medicinal properties and lowers blood sugar. That lowers blood sugar and lowers blood pressure. It's heart, it aids in heart health. And digestion, and so many other medicinal properties that has cancer fighting agencies and things like that. And so, using simple things like that and adding them to a dish or a drink, will be like, yes, I can eat this food, and you could probably eat a lot of it, but you won't always feel extremely weighed down. You won't always feel super sluggish.
Yeah,
and that's been the basis of why I wanted to be a chef, because, I'm going off on a side tangent here, but just knowing the things that we tend to eat in our community over the years, it behooved me to look at things as I grow older, and certain things I learned that I really couldn't have it anymore, or you will have it in, smaller portions as you get older.
Yeah,
exactly. Because that like this, I'm tired of feeling sluggish. I'm tired of having to pass out every time I have to have a meal. I'm tired. I don't want to feel like this anymore. There's got to be a better way. And so you start eventually getting introduced to things and concocting things and experimenting. You're like, oh, hey, I can still make these delicious meals that I grew up eating, or I know that's popular in our community, but it doesn't have to be so bad for you per se.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I can dig it, man. I can dig it. So again, we are, almost at that time. I definitely want to thank you for coming on the program. I definitely want to thank you for the experiences and in terms of sharing your knowledge and your expertise on, becoming a chef, and, talking about some of your dishes and the challenges that it's been, becoming a Black chef, things like that. I think that really weighs heavily, for, when people listen to it, it's going to, really weigh heavily on their minds, maybe, help a lot of people that have been thinking about making that choice, to become a chef, to say, okay, well, hey, if he did it and, he rifled through it, I can do the same thing too. And then, probably start doing a lot more, in our community in terms of, just being somebody, man, that can, craft, nice dishes and, possibly want to start their own restaurant and stuff like that. So I definitely thank you for coming on the show and sharing a lot of that information. Again, you can find him. This is Jahbri Merrit. Now, you can find him on Instagram and Facebook, and they have their own website, which is actually under construction, which he just told me, which is Twin Cities Global Cuisine. Again, I'm gonna say that one more time: Twin Cities Global Cuisine. Right. So it would, on the website, it will be a .com, but on Instagram, it's just Twin Cities Global Cuisine. And Facebook. So is any parting words or anything you want to say before we end the show?
Yes. Thank you for having me. And real quick, it's twincitiesglobal.com. You don't have to put in cuisine. It'll just be twincitiesglobal.com as far as the website. But everything else you said is spot on. Thank you for the opportunity to have me on this platform, speaking again about the challenges, but also the successes of being a chef, and, the adversity and the things that we face and how we continue to push on and wanting to represent good food, good culture, and good tradition, no matter the background, because, being Black is not a monolith. And we really want to show that our food that Twin Cities Global Cuisine provides is not a monolith that's just for, Black people. Mm-hmm. Like, yes, it represents Black food, but it's going to be, we want dishes to be, this plate represents Black people and Black food from all over the world and not just America. Right. And so, it kind of marries it all together, and having that exposure, which is why, many chefs that are well known tend to travel a lot more. So that's another couple of notches I got to get under my belt, is travel more and being more exposed to things, because I've also had several years of education. And so my goal, because we didn't have a lot of this growing up, which I mentioned before, I want to be able to give that back into school settings or school districts, whether they're charter, private, Montessori, public, and teach this amongst other young boys, because I was that young boy who cared at times a little bit too much about food, you know what I'm saying? But, I wanted to, you always wanted to, I want to be able to give that back and show them that we can take control of what we choose to consume. And I've always I didn't want to. All I had growing up was seeing black men in two places. Not to shun anybody for this.
Yeah.
The barber shop.
Yeah.
And the barbecue joint, especially in Kansas City. We didn't have a whole lot of us around. And so wanted to be something very different than that, but also be representation, like pay homage and respect it, but knowing that this is one of the bigger ways that we can take our health back into our consideration and take our health back into, our control.
Yeah.
Take what we consume and what we eat back into control. If everybody doesn't need to be a farmer. You don't need to be a gardener. You barely even have to be a cook. But the goal is to be more aware of what it is that you're choosing to eat and better options, because we need to be around just as much as our black women.
Yeah.
And for our families, for our culture, for our tradition, and for all of us all over. And it really does start with what we choose to consume, along with the mental health, along with the spiritual health and everything else. Exactly, working out and everything else, and then pass it down to the children. Like, yes, this is where we come from, but that doesn't mean we have to stay there as far as where we're going.
Got it. So again, thank you, Jahbri, for coming on the show. I do want to invite you back because there was something else that you were doing in terms of some type of tutorials, and maybe doing like some educational pieces, and where you were actually teaching people actually, certain dishes that you were cooking and stuff like that. So I want to invite you back on to kind of talk about that a little bit later. So we can probably talk about setting that up at some point. But again, this has been the All Things. Yep, absolutely. This has been the All Things Black podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Black Ovation. Make sure that you subscribe, that you share this podcast, and it's on Apple Podcasts, Radio Public, Spotify, Google Podcasts, any streaming platform that you know of. Make sure that you go there and you listen to all the previous podcasts up until the current one, which will more than likely be this one. And thank you guys for listening and participating.
Thank you.